Hello and welcome to another video. In this video we are going to be going over the process of buying our first house and how we found it as first time buyers.
We bought this house during the pandemic, so it did kind of affect the actual process itself a little bit. We're not going to go too much into the specifics of how it affected it in this video. We're going to make a separate video about specifically buying a house during a pandemic.
And this video is based on our experiences only. We are not professionals and this is the first house we've ever bought, so there might be better ways to go about it. This is just how we found it. So we've split this up into 10 different steps, so let's get started.
So step one was kind of getting an idea of what we could afford, like what our price range was. So this step kind of happened as a stage where we weren't even sure if we were going to be buying a property. Like at this stage, it was looking on Rightmove and Zoopla at what was available in the town that we wanted to live in, and having an idea of what we'd be able to get mortgage wise and how much savings we had. So that was kind of a long process. It was quite a lot of, like, every few weeks we were like looking on Zoopla and seeing what was available, and kind of when things started appearing that were in a realistic price range, that kind of spurred us into, you know, booking the viewings.
So yeah, so we saw houses whilst we were in this step. We didn't actually book viewings, it was just what spurred us on to get going. And we had basically just a massive list of everything we wanted in a house. But we went into this already knowing that this was our first home and not our forever home. So we made a lot of compromises, but it was easier to do that because we knew this wasn't our forever home. You know, we have got everything we need. There's just a lot of wants that we didn't get, but that's okay. Like it's our first home, so that helped us also figure out a good price range and what to aim for.
Yeah. Another thing to mention compromise wise is the house that we're in now, that we bought, that we're talking about, is in a completely different town, in actually a different part of the country to where we were initially thinking.
Yeah.
The town that we're sort of going to be living in sort of long term, like the next one. Yeah. So yeah, there was lots of different things that were important, and we just had to decide what was worth compromising on and what we didn't want to compromise on.
Yeah. So once we'd done step one, we moved on to step two of knowing our price range. We've got a hard max that we hoped the house would be less than, but we've got that hard max, and we started setting ourselves up to save 10% of that, so we'd be able to put down a deposit, and that was the entire step two, was just saving that 10%.
The way we came up with the hard max is based on how much we thought we'd be able to save, and there are websites that you can use where you put your salary in and it'll kind of tell you like a rough estimate of how much it thinks you'd be able to borrow.
Yeah, like mortgage comparison websites.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was what we used. So before we started the actual viewing process, it was time to get a mortgage sorted. Now, we weren't getting a real mortgage at this point, it was just a mortgage in principle, and we were told by a lot of people that we needed a mortgage in principle to be able to get some viewings, and that you'd be asked for it to kind of show that you were serious and like you weren't just going to look around houses. We were never actually asked for this. We looked around 4 houses in the end, and we weren't asked for it once.
A few places asked if we had it, but they didn't ask to see it.
Yeah. And to get that, after a little bit of looking around ourselves, we were actually recommended a mortgage broker by some family, and after a phone call with them, we decided to go with a mortgage broker.
Yeah, so a lot of people go directly to the banks, whether it be like the bank that they bank with, or you know, they'll shop around and sort of do the mortgage themselves. One of the main reasons that we decided to go with a broker is because at the time it was pretty early lockdown, and the 95% mortgages had disappeared, and it was looking like the 90% mortgages were going to disappear as well. So we thought, getting a broker involved who is knowing about this stuff as their like full-time job was the best option for us.
Because it wasn't just the mortgages either, it was the rules of what banks were willing to lend on.
Yeah.
As well, like we had a lot of problems when it came to.
We were initially looking at flats,
Yeah.
and some of the lenders were actually still offering the 90% mortgages,
But not on flats.
but not on flats, only on houses.
And yeah, there was just a lot of confusing stuff.
Yeah.
The rules were changing really regularly. So for us, that's how we decided to do it. So once our deposit was saved up and we'd got this mortgage in principle, it was time for step 4. And this was actually looking at houses and arranging viewings. Now, we didn't actually go to many in-person viewings because a lot of estate agents now are doing either virtual tours online through videos or doing like 3D tours of the home, so you can like walk around it yourself 3D, which meant that we could eliminate a lot of the houses and flats that we were looking at because they just didn't suit our needs. Yeah, so it was pretty easy for us. We didn't do many viewings, and having those virtual options really worked for us. And we did actually make an entire video about this and about this process of searching for our house. I'll link it up somewhere up in the cards up here if you do want more of a vlog style in-depth of exactly how it went for us.
Yeah, so when we were doing the viewings, we kind of noticed 2 problems. So the first thing is most of the people that we spoke to were taking us seriously, and you know, the estate agents, the mortgage brokers, all that sort of people. But there was one viewing that we had of a flat, and even though Heather's parents were with us, it felt like they really weren't taking us seriously. So we didn't actually end up liking that flat that they were showing us around. But I think even if we had, we're not sure if we would have sort of continued with that property, with that estate agents, because of how sort of condescending and
nasty.
yeah, like nasty basically, the person who showed us around. So I personally think it was because of our age. Obviously we're both sort of in our 20s.
I feel like we both look quite young.
Yeah, and we both had dyed hair at the time as well. So I think it was probably that is why we weren't being taken too seriously by that estate agents.
But either way, it doesn't matter. If you're there to look, you've got your mortgage in principle.
We had the mortgage in principle as well.
We'd got with us, you could have asked for.
Yeah.
Yeah, we really weren't happy with that one. But all of the rest of them were fine, like more than fine. So, yeah. I just thought it was worth noting because I know it is something, being younger, that I've come across questions online about before. So, yeah. I mean, it did happen, but only the once. And that's their loss, not ours.
Yeah. Another thing that we kind of noticed, which was a little bit annoying, is we'd go to the viewings with a bunch of questions and ask the estate agents these questions, and the only information that they had was the information that we'd also seen that had been copied and pasted into the listing. So it kind of was like, well, what's the point in you even being here? Like, I know we didn't actually experience this when we were looking, but I know when other family members have been sort of buying and selling properties, that the actual current owner showing people around is an option. And I think if we'd have seen some places where the actual current owner was showing us around, that would have been really good, because you can actually ask them the questions.
And that'd be real answers.
Yeah, rather than just like a stock answer of I don't know, or ask the owner, like on one of them.
We can find out.
Yeah, use the website to message the current owner.
So after all the searching and the viewings, we found our house, the house that we sat in right now, and we put in an offer. Now, this wasn't actually the first offer we'd put in. We had found a flat that we really loved the look of beforehand, like about a month and a half prior, and we had put in an offer on that, but luckily the estate agents actually let us know why the previous people who were meant to be buying it had fallen through, and that was because some way that the flat was built, they couldn't get a mortgage on. And we looked into it, and we potentially could have got a mortgage on it. It would have been difficult, but we potentially could have, but we just weren't comfortable with the issues there currently were, so we actually withdrew that offer. So this was not it was technically the second time we'd put an offer in, but we didn't get anywhere past letting the estate agents know our offer for the first one, so it felt like our first one.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. So our offer for this house, it wasn't a typical experience, but I think every sort of transaction, like property transaction, is going to be unique. I think every time it happens, it's going to be different for everyone, right? So the asking price for this house, it actually said on the website, it said offers over 130,000. So we put in an offer of 130,000.
And that was all done through Purple Bricks as well, who's all online.
Yeah. So that is the one that we mentioned before, where they would just like ask the owner the questions. So all of the offers.
Yeah, like when we put our offer in, the estate agents didn't see that. The offer, it
just like automatically goes to the email address of the
owner,
vendor,
and they see that. Like, there's no back and forth with estate agents.
Yeah.
It's directly from you to the current owner.
That's a very good point. So yeah, the asking price was 100. It said offers above 130,000. So we put in an offer of 130,000. We didn't feel like we needed to offer above the asking price, because we were the first people to view it after the lockdown, and we knew that they hadn't had any other viewings booked yet.
Yeah.
Because we were literally like the first day after lockdown, or it was
super quick.
It was very soon after lockdown ended that we viewed this house. We potentially could have offered lower and gotten it accepted, but we just didn't want to. We didn't want to take that risk of it not being accepted, especially with the same offers
to deal with
above.
like the back and forth.
Yeah,
as well.
yeah, we didn't fancy the back and forth, and we were pretty confident that 130 would be accepted, and it seemed reasonable for sort of what we thought. So yeah. So the day after we viewed it, we were so excited. We booked another viewing because we wanted to show friends and family, and we put in the offer that morning, the morning after we viewed it the first time, and it was accepted by the afternoon. So
super
quick, but that was the beginning of all of the waiting.
Yeah, and I just wanted to quickly say, it seemed to be two types of ways that the estate agents advertised how to put an offer in. So a lot of them would be asking price, and it'd have a price, and it kind of seemed quite socially acceptable that you'd offer a little bit lower than that. We're, by a lot of family we were told to offer 10% lower. But then the other way they did it was offers above that price, and we weren't aware of anyone successfully having put in a lower offer than the above, because it specifically states above this. So I just wanted to quickly say that another reason we didn't want to put lower was because it was worded in that specific way. So then step 6, the next step for us was to move quickly. We needed to get our mortgage changed from a mortgage in principle to a real mortgage, and we also needed to find solicitors. We were not expecting it to move so quickly, so we didn't even have solicitors lined up at the time, so we needed to do all of that. At the time I was working a zero-hour contract, and our mortgage broker had let us know that due to my contract we could actually get offered more money with it just being in Jay's name than it being in both our names. Mine would actually like negatively impact the amount we could be offered. So Jay's going to do all of this section because I couldn't deal with any of the mortgage or any of the solicitors because it wasn't in my name at all, it was only in Jay's.
So the first thing to do was to find a solicitor. So I got quotes from 3 different solicitors, 2 that were sort of like well known, and then one which was like an online company. The online company seemed pretty rubbish. They sent me loads and loads of emails, keep asking me what I was doing. And of the 2 like local ones, one of them was really good and attentive and was answering all of my questions. The other one called me back like 2 days later. I'd already gone with the first one, obviously. So yeah, so that was the 6th of August that I sent the forms to actually instruct the solicitors. At that point we'd also talked to our mortgage broker and got an actual meeting set with the sort of the next step mortgage broker person.
He was like up to that point we'd spoken to the company mortgage broker, And then now that we'd got an offer accepted, we were like
assigned a
to
particular
one
person. Yeah.
person.
So this person kind of was with us for the whole process of, you know, changing our application in principle to an actual mortgage. So yeah, we had a meeting with him the week after I sent the forms back to the solicitors.
That was the earliest we could do.
Yeah, that was the earliest we could do, because they were pretty busy at the time. And at that point, at that meeting with that mortgage broker, we actually decided to put a 15% deposit down. So because this house was so much cheaper than the other places that we'd been looking at before, we could afford a 15% deposit, and the 90% mortgages were
not looking great.
Yeah, they were becoming more few and far between, I think. So at the recommendation of our broker, we put down the 15% deposit, and the following week after that, he ended up giving up on the original lender that we were going to go with, because apparently it was a case of at 8 o'clock you're allowed to start applying for them, and then by 8:30 they're all gone. And he tried that a few days running and wasn't able to get it, so we had to go for a different lender in the end, who was a slightly higher percentage, but
not a lot.
Month on month it costs us an extra like £2 a month, so it's not the end of the world. So we got the letter to say that our mortgage had been approved on the 2nd of September, which was a month after when our offer was accepted. So at that point it still felt like things were going pretty quickly.
So then the next stage was getting everything in place and sorted, and unfortunately step 7 was a waiting game. It was a hell of a lot of waiting. So around 2 weeks after, you know, we'd got everything set up and ready to go, we had given the solicitors everything they needed from us. And even though at that point they had everything they needed, from the putting in our offer and getting that accepted and the date of exchange, there were 14 weeks in between those dates. Now, a lot of this we think was just waiting for replies, but even now we're not completely sure why there was so much waiting. There were a lot of stories told, a lot of people saying different things, but even our solicitors couldn't figure out what the hold-up was, because this house was sat empty and it had been for almost a year. So there was just no need for it to take this long. I mean, in the scheme of things, it wasn't that long, probably for the average. But this was an empty house. There was no one living in it, and it had been done up to sell it.
Also, we weren't selling a house, so there was no chain. Like, it was
like we were first-time buyers, so there was no chain. Yeah, we don't know, but there was a lot of waiting, and we don't know what the hold-up was. So then on to step 8.
So, setting the exchange, we'd gotten to the point where my solicitor had told me that they were ready, they had everything they needed for me to be able to suggest a date. I'm not sure why it was me that had to suggest a date, but the seller's solicitor were being so slow that maybe that's why. So I suggested, this was like early in the week, and I'd suggested the following Friday, which was Friday the 13th of November. After I suggested that, she said that's probably fine, sent over some forms, the last sort of things that I needed to sign and she needed to sign, and we drove down to the solicitor's office. Because we were just that excited. Yeah, late that night, to deliver the forms, and just so we know for sure that they were there. At that office, we're not posting them. Yeah, we didn't want them to get lost in the post, but yeah, we were so excited. We did like the 50-minute hour drive. Each way. Yeah, to post them through the door ourselves. But it was worth it. Yeah, so that was like, you know, a week and a half before we were due to exchange, or the day that I'd suggested to exchange. So the solicitor requested the money from the lender, and it got to the Thursday, the day before we were due to exchange, before the seller formally confirmed, or maybe it was the seller's solicitor relayed the message, but it was the day before, the day we were due to exchange and complete, that we actually were formally told it's definitely happening tomorrow. So that was crazy. Yeah. But exciting. So on to the next step. Step 9 was the date itself. So as Jay just mentioned, we did exchange and complete on the same day. I don't think this is normal all of the time, but because we were in a lockdown again by that point,
it was recommended just because the rules could change at any time and we didn't want to be left in limbo. So we had it recommended that exchange and complete on the same day, make sure it's all there and done.
So on the Thursday, the day before exchange and complete, I was told by my solicitor that I would get a phone call before 11 saying that my solicitor had transferred the money to the seller's solicitor, and then I'd get another phone call an hour or 2 hours later to say that the seller's solicitor had received that money.
And that could be, it could take anywhere from 5 minutes to like 4 hours for that money to go through. Like, there was no way for us to know how long it'd take. Yeah,
so we were told before 11 we'd get the first phone call, and it got to 12:05 and we hadn't heard anything, so we were a bit like, we were worried that it wasn't actually going to happen. We were thinking all kinds of things, weren't we?
Yeah.
Got a phone call at 12:05 to say the seller's solicitor has received the money, go and get the keys. So that caught us so off guard because we hadn't gotten the first phone call to like, you know, be ready to organise getting the keys and stuff.
Yeah, like our plan was to, after we got the first phone call, an hour after, to drive there because it took so long to drive. So we were here ready and waiting. But
so yeah, it caught us off guard, but it was exciting. It was so exciting.
Yeah.
So yeah, we organised to collect the keys and
we vlogged the whole day.
Yeah, we vlogged the whole day. Put a link up there or something. Yeah, lovely.
Yeah. So then step 10, our final step, was to collect the keys. So we contacted our estate agent that we'd gone through, like the local person for the area, because we'd already beforehand made sure that they were the ones that had got the keys. But when we contacted them, it turned out they were actually in viewings in the next town over until like late afternoon. Mm-hmm. But amazingly, they actually gave us their home address and got their wife to give us the keys so we could just like get here and get in.
Yeah, that's good.
So yeah, we just gave them a call, organised getting the keys, and then we drove to our house for the first time, with it being our house and letting ourselves in the door rather than someone else. Although not exactly open, but that doesn't matter. We drove to our house for the first time.
So yeah, that was the process for us. Obviously it's different for everyone. Every experience of buying a house is going to be different, but we really do hope that this was useful for someone. If you're a first time buyer and you want to know what the process kind of looks like, then we really hope that this was useful. Being a first time buyer does have some perks. So one of them is, if you're a first time buyer and the house is under a certain amount, you don't pay any stamp duty. So the stamp duty would have been over £1,000, which the first time you buy a house, that's not a thing you have to worry about. At the time there was actually a stamp duty holiday, so again, it's kind of wouldn't have mattered anyway, but it's just something that you need to be aware of. There are also some schemes to help first time buyers, like the Help to Buy and the Lifetime ISA, that kind of thing.
I think there's a new one being introduced this year as well, but I don't know.
Yeah, because it was such a quick decision for us, from like deciding, hey, let's buy a house or buy a flat, buy a house kind of thing, to actually doing it. We never actually did any of that, like any of those sort of lifetime ISAs or anything like that. So I'm sure there's loads of YouTube videos about that kind of thing, but nothing from us.
Yeah, we didn't have enough
foresight.
Yeah, to do that. So yeah. Yeah, I do hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it was helpful, and if you do have any questions, leave them down below. So yeah, bye.